All right, let's dive into a passage from the Gospel of Luke that's, well, it's pretty challenging. It can even be a little unsettling. We're going to break down Luke 12, drawing from some great analysis by Dr. Daniel Darko to figure out what it really means to be ready for a master who could show up at any moment, and why being ready for that changes absolutely everything.
So get this. Jesus has just finished telling his followers, hey, don't worry about a thing. Not food, not clothes, not your life. And then, almost in the same breath, he does a complete 180 and says, actually, there is one you should fear. Talk about a pivot, right? It's designed to make you stop cold and ask, wait, what? Who is this one person we should be afraid of?
And the answer just flips the whole script. The fear Jesus is talking about isn't fear of the government or losing your job. You know, the exact stuff he just said not to worry about. No, he's saying the one true, even healthy fear is this profound sense of awe and respect for the God who has the final say.
This right here is the heart of it. All that energy we waste on our daily anxieties, Jesus says it should be refocused into a kind of spiritual readiness. Why? Because the Son of Man, that's a term for the ultimate judge, is going to arrive when you least expect it. This isn't about being scared all the time, it's about living in a state of calm, constant preparedness.
Now, to make this super practical, Jesus does what he does best. He tells a story. And this story isn't just about the consequences of being unprepared, it's also about the absolutely mind-blowing reward for those who are found ready and waiting. The language he uses here is so specific and so cool. Stay dressed for action isn't just some vague saying. Dr. Darko points out this is a direct echo of the book of Exodus, when the Hebrews were told to eat the very first Passover meal ready to bolt, with their cloaks tucked in, prepared to leave Egypt at a moment's notice. It's a call to live ready, actively waiting.
And here's where it gets wild. This is the twist. And it would have been totally shocking to his listeners. For the servants who are ready when the master gets home, he serves them. I mean, in that culture, with its rigid social structure, this is just unthinkable. The master puts on an apron and waits on his own slaves? It's a complete status reversal, the highest honor you could possibly imagine. And the last image is one we've all heard, a thief in the night. It's simple, but it's powerful. You don't get ready for a thief by trying to guess the exact time they'll show up. That's impossible. You get ready by making sure your house is secure every single night. The point isn't about prediction, it's about constant preparation. So after hearing this, Peter chimes in with a really practical question. He's like, hey, Jesus, is this story just for us, your inner circle, or is this for everybody? And that question makes Jesus sharpen his focus, shifting from just general readiness to the really high-stakes world of leadership and accountability.
To really get what comes next, we have to understand the role of a steward, or oikonomos in Greek. This wasn't just a helper. Think of them as the CEO of the master's entire operation. They handled the money, the other staff, the supplies, everything. It was a position of incredible trust and immense power.
Jesus then lays out two paths for the steward, and man, they could not be more different. The steward who does his job, who takes care of the household, he gets a promotion. He's put in charge of everything. But the steward who abuses that power, who parties and mistreats the other servants, he faces a horrific end. The message is clear. For leaders, the rewards are great, but the punishment for failure is severe and absolute.
And this all boils down to one of the most famous and powerful lines in the entire gospel. To everyone to whom much was given, of him much will be required. It is the principle of accountability, plain and simple. The more power, the more privilege, the more responsibility you have, the higher the standard you'll be held to.
Okay, so just when you think the intensity has peaked, it goes up another notch. Jesus makes this truly shocking statement, I didn't come to bring peace, but division. And he says this division is going to slice right through the most basic unit of society, the family. He paints this vivid picture. Imagine a typical household, maybe a family of 5. He says when his message, his call, enters that home, it's not going to automatically unite them. In fact, he says, it's going to split them right down the middle. And just listen to how personal this gets. This isn't some abstract political argument. He lists the most intimate relationships you can have, father against son, mother against daughter. He's saying that a person's commitment to him will force a choice so fundamental that it could actually break these sacred family bonds. That is the painful cost of discipleship.
So what's he really saying? Is he against families? Not at all. What Dr. Darko highlights is that Jesus is making a radical claim about priorities. He's saying that allegiance to the kingdom of God is the ultimate loyalty. It has to come before everything else. even before those natural, beautiful, and powerful family bonds. It's a complete reordering of what matters most.
So, how does this all tie together? You've got this call to be ready, the stark warning to leaders, the painful reality of division. Well, it all leads to one final urgent challenge from Jesus about just opening our eyes and seeing what's actually happening in the world.
Jesus' final critique is just scathing. He looks at the crowd and says, "You all are hypocrites." He says, "You can look at the clouds and know it's going to rain, or feel the wind and know it's going to be hot." They were experts at reading the signs in nature. So why, he asks, are they completely blind to the spiritual signs of their own time? Why can't they see the significance of his presence and the judgment that's coming?
And that leaves us with the big, lingering question, doesn't it? A question that cuts right through 2,000 years and lands squarely in our lap. I mean, today, we are incredible at predicting the weather. We have satellites, supercomputers, all of it. But has our ability to read the signs of our own times, to really understand what matters, kept up? That is the challenge of Luke 12.